Revealed, my son's touching gesture at a local pub led to an incredible life-changing moment. The rain poured down on the small Midwestern town, tapping against the windows of the local pub where Jake sat nursing a lukewarm beer. He watched the droplets race, reflecting on his own life as he leaned against the bar. At 35, life had dealt him blow after blow, but his 10-year-old son Ben was the one bright spot in his existence. As a dedicated single father and veteran, Jake tried hard to stand tall, even as the weight of financial strain pressed down on his shoulders. He lost his job at the factory just last month, and the shadows of doubt loomed over him. Tonight, the pub was filled with a mix of laughter and tension. Talk revolved around a new restaurant that had opened down the street, attracting customers away from the old place with a fresh menu and trendy ambience. The old pub, where Jake and Ben shared countless memories, was now the backdrop for discussions that felt sharper than the bittersweet taste of nostalgia. Jake sighed, recalling the joy of families gathering for dinner, friends toasting to the good times, all now stacked against the wall by the harsh reality of dwindling business. "Isn't it sad?" Ben's innocent voice broke through Jake's thoughts, looking up with wide, concerned eyes. "They used to have live music here on Fridays, remember?" Jake smiled, tousling Ben's hair, but he could feel the knot in his stomach tighten. The warmth of the pub had dimmed. It felt like a farewell party for something loved but about to be lost. But Ben wasn't one to dwell on darkness. Full of innocent determination, he leaned toward the bartender. With a bright grin, he handed over his modest allowance, requesting a drink for the lonely elderly war veteran sitting in the corner. The man had that familiar look of lost memories, and Ben's simple, kind-hearted gesture seemed to echo throughout the room. "You sure about that, kid?" the bartender asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yeah. He looks like he could use a friend," Ben insisted. There was a moment of silence, then the atmosphere began shifting. Others witnessed this small act of kindness, sparking conversations and encouraging camaraderie. The weight of despair lightened as patrons chuckled and shared stories about their own struggles and victories, igniting the fading ember of community support they had almost forgotten. Yet, tensions erupted soon after, as some regulars deemed Ben's act a waste, accusing him of foolishness. "What good will that do?" one man sneered. "Just giving away your money like that?" Still, through the discord, something profound happened. The new restaurant owner, initially viewed as a threat, was revealed to have deep connections to the town, family ties and shared history that flowed back into their lives like a river finding its source. The realization dawned on Jake and Ben like the sun breaking through the storm clouds, rekindling hope where there had seemingly been none. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The spark ignited by Ben's simple act spread through the pub like wildfire, compelling townsfolk to confront their pride and the twisted perception of worthiness. Jake and Ben rallied the community, encouraging them to rediscover the fiber of shared values and to remember that it was together that they could rise above the troubles that clung to their lives. As laughter intertwined with the clink of glasses, the question loomed amidst the eager chatter: would they come together to revive the warmth of their once thriving community? In that charged atmosphere, Jake felt a flicker of hope. Could they, against all the odds, build a brighter tomorrow together? As the evening unfolded, Jake clutched onto Ben's hand, a silent promise passing between them. They stood on the brink of something bigger, something transformative. But one unanswered question hung heavy: could a single act of kindness pave the way for the revival of their beloved pub and the soul of their community? A wave of laughter and chatter filled the air, swirling around the small pub as if to wash away the worries that had burdened them for so long. Jake's heart raced, a mixture of pride and determination swelled in his chest. It was a simple reminder of how small actions could have a ripple effect, leading to something so much greater. Ben, glowing with happiness, glanced up at Jake. "Did you see that, Dad? They're all talking. It's like we started a party." His voice was bright with excitement, a reassuring balm to Jake's lingering doubts. Jake nodded and took a deep breath, steeling himself against the uncertain future. But in that moment, surrounded by the warmth and energy of the community, it felt possible. Maybe this was the spark they needed, not just for the pub, but for themselves. The bartender brought Ben his root beer, and to Jake's surprise, he offered a drink to the elderly veteran, a wide smile plastered on his face. "To new friends," he declared, raising the glass high. The man in the corner lifted his own glass, touched by the gesture, and for a moment, time stood still. In that fleeting moment, something magical happened. The pub filled with raised glasses and laughter erupted, cascading like the sound of music that once filled the air every Friday night. Jake's heart soared. The old rhythm was coming back. This was their pub, and it was alive again, but life isn't always smooth sailing. As the night progressed, shadows lingered in the corners, whispers of cynicism mixed with the laughter. A couple of regulars glared from the bar, their expressions clouded with skepticism. "A bunch of fools," one muttered to his buddy. "They're just making it worse. Trust me." With each negative word, Jake felt the weight of regret creeping back. What if they weren't enough? What if this spark fizzled out? But then Ben sidled up to him, his face aglow with pure joy, and he squeezed Jake's hand. Suddenly, everything felt clearer. It wasn't about the critics or the noise, it was about their bond and the connections they were forging right there, rooted in kindness. "Let us do something more, Dad," Ben suggested, his eyes twinkling with enthusiasm. "What if we had a pizza night next week? Everyone can bring their favorite make-at-home recipe. And maybe we could invite the new restaurant owner too." Jake's breath caught in his throat. The idea was fresh, unpolished, and full of possibility. He could see the glimmer in Ben's eyes, vision untainted by the world's harsh expectations. "That's a great idea, buddy." With the seed of an idea planted, the crowd began buzzing with animated chatter. The thought of a pizza night blossomed like wildflowers breaking through the cracks of concrete. As the clink of glasses continued, laughter rang out, mingling with each person's hopes and dreams for what was to come. Jake felt as though they were on the edge of a new beginning. Could this event, woven into the fabric of their community, help heal those fractured relationships with the restaurant owner and the old pub lovers? One question hung in the air as the night deepened: would they have the courage to confront their fears, to embrace change together? As they swept up the din of voices, a shared sense of purpose ignited within them. And somewhere deep inside him, Jake felt the stirrings of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they were in for the fight of their lives together. And as Jake looked at Ben, he knew something monumental awaited them. What would happen when they faced that challenge head-on? The following week felt electric with anticipation. Jake could hardly sleep the night before pizza night, his mind racing with possibilities. The pub was prepped, tables pushed together to create a makeshift banquet. He could already picture the scene: friends, families, laughter, and the smell of baking dough filling the air. Ben buzzed around him like a bumblebee, inconsolably excited. "Dad, do you think everyone will come? What if the restaurant owner shows up?" His wide eyes shimmered, a mixture of hope and nerves. Jake grinned, ruffling Ben's hair affectionately. "I think they'll come. This is about more than just pizza. It's about our community gathering." When the doors swung open that evening, the pub transformed. Neighbors carried warm pizzas adorned with toppings that told stories of traditions and preferences: the pepperoni from Mr. Harris next door, the veggie delight from Mrs. Larson, who always insisted on making things healthy. The aroma wrapped around Jake like a comforting hug, mingling with the bright energy in the room. As laughter cascaded off the walls, Jake spotted the restaurant owner, a wiry man with a cautious smile. His presence felt like an unwelcome chill at the summer picnic. Jake's heart sank a bit, wondering if the past grievances would bubble to the surface. Ben, oblivious to his father's unease, bounded over to the man. "Hi. I'm Ben. You're invited to try my special pizza too." With a twinkle in his eye, he presented a slice topped with a childlike mix of marshmallows and chocolate chips, a favorite he concocted with his mom. All the chatter faded, replaced by a moment of silence. Jake's throat felt tight, waiting for the man's reaction. But then a slow smile broke across the restaurant owner's face. "You know, I think I will," he replied, taking a tentative bite. A ripple of gratitude washed over the crowd, lifting the heaviness that had resided between the two places for far too long. Conversations resumed, and as the owner shared his thoughts on food, new friendships began to take root. Jake moved through the crowd, his heart swelling with pride. He caught snippets of laughter and shared stories, watching as barriers began to break down. Ben darted from one group to another, spreading joy like wildflowers. Each smile exchanged felt like another connection formed, another thread woven into the rich tapestry of their community. But as the night wore on, Jake noticed that not everyone was on board with this new spirit. A few naysayers stood across the bar, crossing their arms and muttering. A familiar face caught his eye: Gina, known for her fierce opinions and even fiercer loyalty to the old ways of the pub. "Jake," she called out, her tone sharp. "What exactly are you doing here? You really think this will change anything?" Her words were like ice water, dousing his burgeoning optimism. Jake could feel the air thicken with tension. Would he let the negativity erase the hard work that had gone into this night? He took a deep breath and stepped forward, finding his voice. "Gina, we're trying to come together. To heal, not to erase. You can be part of this, too." Her brow softened, but suspicion lingered. And what if it doesn't work? A chance for defiance flickered in his heart. What if it does? What if we start something beautiful together? He felt Ben's hand slip into his, grounding him. Their gazes met, and the moment felt electric, embodying hope, courage, and love for their community. But would the others feel it too? Would Gina choose to open her heart, or hold on to her grievances? As the night deepened into laughter and warmth, Jake's heart raced anew. They had taken the first steps, but the true test was yet to come. What if the challenges awaiting them would be harder than they'd ever imagined? Jake felt the weight of Gina's gaze even from a distance, like a storm cloud hovering overhead. He watched as she exchanged skeptical looks with her companions, arms crossed tightly over her chest. The swirling energy of the pub seemed to contrast sharply with her stance, amplifying the divide between the old ways and the new beginnings he was attempting to forge. "Dad, look!" Ben's excited voice cut through Jake's worries, pulling his attention back to the festivities. He pointed to a group erupting in laughter as one of the kids attempted a pizza toss, the dough soaring through the air before it flopped back onto the table with an unceremonious plop. Laughter broke out, and for a moment, it felt like a healing balm over the tension. But Jake couldn't shake his unease. He moved closer to Gina, feeling the ripple of voices surrounding him. "I know change is hard," he said gently, trying to break the chill surrounding her. "But it starts with small steps. This is something new." She shifted her weight, considering him. "And what if it all falls apart? What if it just ends up a mess?" Jake shrugged, feeling a spark of determination. "Even if it does, we'll learn from it. Isn't that what life is about?" He caught Ben's eye, the boy glancing back and forth between him and Gina. With a burst of audacity, Ben broke free from his group of friends. He dashed towards them, a slice of pizza in hand, the marshmallow-topped piece more of a creation than a meal at this point. "Gina, you should try my special pizza. It's sweet and really yummy." The unexpected gesture caught everyone off guard, and a hush fell over the crowd once more. The silence felt rich with anticipation, a collective breath held. Jake watched as Gina's stern expression softened, touched by Ben's innocence. I don't really think," she faltered, gazing down at the slice. "Just one bite," Ben encouraged, tilting his head with that undeniable charm that only a child could wield. "You might like it." The crowd erupted in light-hearted banter, coaxing Gina just enough. After an awkward pause, she took the slice with hesitation. The moment she bit into it, Ben's grin split wide, and the room buzzed with curiosity. Gina chewed, her eyes widening with surprise. "This isn't half bad, kid," she said, her voice softer, yet playful. A ripple of laughter surged through the pub as the tension slowly melted away. Jake felt a swell of pride in his chest. Nothing could truly be achieved without a leap of faith, and Ben had reminded everyone of that. But just then, a voice boomed across the room, the owner of the restaurant stepping forward again. His tone was firm, leaving no room for ambiguity. "I appreciate this gathering, but let us not forget that some of us still disagree with how things have been handled. If you want to change, there must be genuine efforts to mend old wounds." Otherwise the chatter faded, and a feeling of vulnerability crept in. Jake's heart raced. This was the reality he had feared. The balance between progress and resistance was precarious. Gina exchanged glances with the other naysayers, and Jake could sense it was more than just pizza at stake. There were stories trapped inside the hearts of his neighbors, narratives tangled in the threads of their shared history. Ben's eyes darted around, sensing the shift, and for a brief moment, Jake felt the burdens of fear and hope collide. He could see it in Gina's eyes, the flicker of possibility, yet he could also see the resistance in the others. It hung in the air like static electricity. The night hadn't yet reached its zenith. What would happen if the restaurant owner pushed too hard? Would the spirit of the evening hold, or would it unravel? Jake squeezed Ben's hand, ready to face what lay ahead. One thing was certain, they had opened the door, but would anyone walk through it? The tension in the air thickened, almost palpable, as the restaurant owner continued. "People have their grievances. They feel unheard. If we don't address those grievances, this is just a distraction." His voice echoed against the walls, chilling the cozy atmosphere. Jake felt the weight of his words settle heavily. He exchanged a glance with Ben, whose innocent smile was still clinging to the hope that this evening meant something good. But Jake's heart sank. The owner spoke a truth that stung. The good intentions they had laid out, vibrant and hopeful, were now overshadowed by the shadows of the unresolved past that still lurked. Gina shifted uncomfortably. Her companions, the old guard of the community, murmured amongst themselves, nodding slowly. Jake could practically see their thoughts laid bare: the fear of change, the longing for certainty, the unanswered questions that had become a part of their fabric. "Okay, but how do we start?" Jake shouted over the rising murmurs, desperation threading through his voice. He had to bring the attention back, had to push through the fear. "What can we do to fix this? We all want this community to thrive, right?" Gina fixed her gaze on him, a surprised glint sparking in her eyes. "It's not that simple, Jake. There are years of hurt, of misunderstandings. We can't just sweep it under the rug with pizza and games." "Maybe not," Jake replied, keeping his tone steady, "but maybe it's the first step. We need to be willing to listen to each other, to really listen. What's the harm in engaging?" Ben chimed in, his voice clear and heartfelt, cutting through the murmurs. He looked around, eyes wide with sincerity. "Like tonight? I invited you into trying my pizza. You liked it, right?" Around the pub, the crowd began to soften, smiles returned. Some laughter flickered back. Jake could see cracks forming in the ice, the faintest glimmers of connection being rekindled. Gina's expression faltered, caught between her instincts and the reminder of the innocence that encapsulated Ben's offering. Kids, they see things differently. But adults? We have these scars. The restaurant owner nodded, relenting slightly. We've all been wounded, some more than others. His voice softened. But it's true, kids like Ben here. They are brave enough to believe. They see light where we see darkness. A silence swept through the room, reverberating with the realization of their collective burden. Jake glanced at the warm smiles of the attendees and the remnants of laughter hanging in the air. Would they seriously consider bridging the gap? The idea of healing had been thrown into the open, now it just needed a little push. Maybe we need to have a discussion, Gina finally said, her voice gaining strength. Not about what has been done, but about where we want to go from here. Yes. Jake felt the adrenaline rush, hope surging within him. Exactly. We can't change the past, but we can shape something new together. This night can be the beginning of that, can't it? Eyes flickered around the room, and just as Jake breathed a sigh of relief, the owner raised his glass, his voice booming with a newfound resolve. Then let us toast to beginnings, to putting aside differences, and bringing new ideas to the table. The room erupted with cheers and clinking glasses, yet the reality remained it would take real courage to face the stories that lingered beneath the surface. Jake's heart thrummed with a mixture of fear and excitement, but even as the clamor enveloped him, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Would the adults, who had faced the tide of change with skepticism, truly open themselves to the conversations of healing? He held Ben's hand tighter, determination thrumming between them. The night had transformed, but many roads lay ahead. What would they discover when they stepped onto that road of uncertain beginnings? As the cheers faded into a gentle hum, a warmth filled the room, a flicker of hope mingled with the scent of fresh pizza. Jake watched as the crowd began to relax, smiles spreading across faces that moments before had been tense. It was a fragile moment, but there was something electric in the air, a collective willingness to see beyond the hurt. Gina leaned in closer to Jake, her eyes now reflecting the vulnerability of her earlier walls. You really think this is going to lead to something, don't you? She asked, attempts to mask her skepticism shedding as she spoke. I do, Jake replied, heart pounding in rhythm with his growing belief. It starts with us being brave enough to dive into the hard stuff. That's all it takes, courage. And maybe a little bit of pizza. Ben beamed at the mention of pizza, the sparkle in his eyes returning. I can make pizza for everyone every week. We can have meetings and games and talk about what's wrong. Just like tonight. The adults chuckled, the laughter spilling past their guarded expressions. But Jake saw past the humor, he felt that Ben's proposal held deeper possibilities. Underneath the innocent cheer was a genuine desire for connection, something all of them were craving, whether they knew it or not. We do need more slices of community, the restaurant owner interjected with a chuckle. His demeanor had softened considerably. Let us keep the pizza nights going. It'll be like a town hall, except with more cheese and less formality. There were nods of agreement from around the room. Jake sensed that they had stumbled on something important, a shared purpose sparked into existence by a boy's love for pizza and an evening full of tension. With renewed energy breathing life into their gathering, Jake decided to seize the moment. So, how do we want to start addressing the grievances? What do we want our community to look like a year from now? Gina was quick to respond, we need forums to express our concerns but with constructive goals. Let's find ways to make our voices heard in a positive way. The old guard of the community agreed, murmurs of consent blending together like a spontaneous choir. A discussion unfolded, energized ideas flowing among them, forging bonds where distrust used to reside. Jake let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. This was the magic he had hoped for, a connection that transcended past wounds. As the evening wore on and laughter mingled with increasingly daring conversations, Jake felt a pull. It was as if the shadows that had lingered over the community were beginning to lift, replaced by hope, camaraderie, and new perspectives. But with the warmth of hope also came questions. What challenges awaited them as they pulled those old scars into the light? How would they handle the resistance that still lingered within some who weren't yet willing to share their pain? Jake's gaze shifted to Ben, who was eagerly discussing his pizza creation with an elderly woman, enthusiasm lighting up his face. In that moment, Jake knew they were in this together. A newfound sense of purpose settled in his chest, but shadows of uncertainty still loomed. The real test was yet to come. Would they rise to meet it? Could they sustain this momentum, turn the kindness they had shown tonight into actionable change for their community? In that hopeful ambience, a delicate balance was struck. One of vulnerability and strength, of old scars and fresh connections. A precarious journey awaited, and as the conversation swelled, Jake caught a glimmer in Gina's eyes, the potential for a new understanding brewing between them. What would it take to forge that bond deeper, and what effect would it have on their mission to heal the rift in their community? As the night wound down, the laughter started to ebb, and the conversations grew softer. The warmth of the pizza and the shared stories lingered in the air like a cozy blanket, but Jake felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. This was just the beginning. Gina caught his eye, a smile teasing the corners of her lips. So, where do we go from here? We can't just ride this high and leave it hanging. Jake nodded, grateful for her insight. Right. We need to make a plan. Maybe we could do a follow-up meeting next week? We can figure out how to put those ideas into action. Ben's face lit up at the suggestion, and the infectious enthusiasm spread through the room like wildfire. I'm in. Let's make more pizza and create a list of ideas. He jumped off his chair, clapping his hands together in excitement. It was as if his energy ignited something deeper within everyone present. The night morphed into a brainstorming session, where everyone felt free to voice their thoughts. The moments that followed were raw and genuine. Gina suggested a community garden to foster collaboration, while another neighbor proposed a weekly cleanup effort to beautify their shared space. Ideas flowed, each one met with cheers and a few playful jabs about who would oversee which project, but amid the burgeoning excitement, a subtle tension rippled through the room when a shadow crossed the doorway. Jake's heart sank as he recognized one of the community's more skeptical members, Carl. An imposing figure, Carl had often been seen as a barrier to unity. His frown cut through the jovial atmosphere, and Jake wondered if they were about to face the resistance they had feared. Jake's pulse quickened. Would Carl's presence quash the hope that bloomed tonight? Or would he discover that this gathering was about more than just a momentary escape? With a deep breath, he encouraged the group to keep talking, to welcome the intrusion as an opportunity. Hey, Carl. Come join us. Jake's voice rang out, desperate but hopeful. There was a moment of silence, then Carl stepped into the room, arms crossed and brow furrowed. It felt like everyone held their breath, waiting to hear his thoughts. What is going on here? Carl's tone was gruff, but there was curiosity beneath the surface. Jake was ready to speak up. We're planning to have pizza nights every week. We want to talk about our community, how we can make it better together. Carl's gaze shifted from Jake to the others around the table, seeing the hope in their faces. For a moment, the tension melted into something softer, a flicker of interest evident in his eyes. Pizza, huh? The group laughed, disarming the mood slightly. Yeah. Everyone pitches in with ideas, and we just talk. Ben chimed in, his innocence shining through. We've been talking about things we can do to help each other out. The corners of Carl's mouth tilted upward almost imperceptibly. Sounds like you've got a plan, then. Jake took a chance. You should really join us, Carl. We could use your experience. You know this community really well. A long pause stretched between them. Jake held his breath, praying Carl would step into this newfound energy rather than resist it. Finally, Carl nodded slowly, the tension in his shoulders easing just a bit. I'll think about it. As he turned to leave, Jake felt a surge of emotion. It was a small victory, but perhaps enough to tip the scales. Maybe hope wasn't so fragile after all. The laughter resumed, though it now carried with it the promise of potential change. As groups gathered to discuss projects and share ideas, Jake felt a glow in his heart. But as their plans took shape, a thought nagged at him. What if Carl's hesitance turned into a bigger challenge later? Would their bond hold strong against the weight of old grievances? The night ended, but the ripple effects of their conversation lingered in the air. Jake looked at Gina, her expression thoughtful. If we can win Carl over, maybe we can address the deeper issues holding us back. What would it take to truly change hearts and heal their community? Could they overcome the resistance of those still locked in past pain? As the night faded into quiet, Jake felt the weight of the journey ahead. Tough questions awaited answers, and it was clear the next chapters were going to test their resolve. The following week arrived quicker than Jake anticipated. The anticipation of the second pizza night buzzed through the air like electricity. Monday felt like a milestone, a chance to transform that fleeting moment of hope into something concrete. Neighbors arrived with a mix of excitement and caution, echoing Jake's own jittery feelings. Gina had set a warm, welcoming atmosphere, with candles flickering softly on each table. The scent of fresh pizza wafted through the open window as laughter bounced off the walls, blending with the sounds of bustling kitchens from nearby homes. Jake scanned the room, looking for Carl, his heart pounding with both hope and anxiety. Would he show up? Just as the thought crossed his mind, the door creaked open, and Carl stepped inside. Jake's breath caught. Carl looked a bit less imposing this time, surrounded by the warmth of friendly faces and laughter. He carried a box of soda, an unexpected offering that seemed to symbolize his willingness to engage. "Hey everyone," Carl said, a smirk barely breaking through his serious demeanor. "I figured you'd need some drinks to wash down all that pizza." The room erupted in cheers, and a sense of camaraderie formed like an invisible thread weaving them together. "Thanks, Carl. Join us," Ben exclaimed, his voice bright and inviting. Jake noticed how everyone's reactions shifted as they welcomed Carl into the fold. Bits of tension dissolved, replaced with smiles that lit the room. As they dove into discussions about the community garden, Carl surprised everyone by sharing his thoughts. "You know, I think a community garden could work," he started, his voice steady. "I've seen other places transform with similar projects." Jake's heart leaped. This was a shift, a glimmer of hope. Carl was stepping beyond skepticism, offering insights and suggesting paths forward. Jake leaned forward, caught up in the excitement. "Absolutely. We could even host workshops on gardening. It'd be great for families." "This isn't just about plants," Carl added, a slight edge softening his tone. "It's about bringing people together. We'll need volunteers. You know I can help manage that." The group erupted with applause, appreciating Carl's contribution. They were officially welcoming him into their circle, a step toward unity. Conversations flowed more freely now, and the ideas blossomed like flowers in spring, creating art projects, monthly potlucks, and neighborhood watch sessions. Each suggestion was fun and vibrant, rippling through the room, engaging everyone. Jake glanced at Gina. She caught his eye, and they exchanged an astonished smile. The walls that had long defined their community were cracking. So much had changed in just a week, but as the joy surged, Jake couldn't shake the nagging worry. Was it too soon to trust this change? What unspoken tension lingered beneath the surface? "Hey, Jake," Carl suddenly called, pulling him back from his spiral. "What do you think about leading the first cleanup day? People seem excited, and I can help coordinate it." Jake's heart raced. The thought of leading something felt big, daunting even. But deep down, he felt a surge of determination. "I'd love to," he responded, a wide grin breaking across his face. With the meeting winding down, Jake felt the buzz of possibility swirl around him. Amidst the collective enthusiasm, he realized the true strength of their community lay not just in plans for change, but in the relationships they nurtured along the way. As the last few neighbors left, Carl lingered, chatting with Ben and Gina. Jake stepped outside for a moment, soaking in the cool night air. The sky was vast, and the stars twinkled overhead as if cheering them on, but in the back of his mind, concerns whispered like shadows. Could this newfound unity withstand challenges that were bound to come? Would Carl's willingness be enough against the weight of old grievances? Determined to push through, Jake returned inside, ready for whatever came next. A stronger community awaited, but he couldn't help wondering how would they handle the inevitable setbacks. Would the spark they felt tonight continue to light their path forward? The week after pizza night floated by slowly. Each day felt like an eternity, building anticipation around the planned community cleanup. Jake kept replaying Carl's surprising warmth in his mind, that smirk of his breaking through the rough edges. Yet, as the date drew nearer, there was an underlying tension gnawing at Jake. Would Carl's enthusiasm translate into action when it mattered? Finally, Saturday arrived. The sun peeked out, casting a soft glow on the street as neighbors gathered. Jake stood at the meeting point, feeling a mix of excitement and dread. He had taken it upon himself to assemble supplies, trash bags, gloves, and refreshments, but now felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. What if no one showed up? One by one, familiar faces filled the space, and Jake's heart lifted. Gina was the first to arrive, wielding a bright red cooler. "I brought lemonade," she cheered, immediately drawing smiles from others. "Perfect," Jake replied, letting out a relieved laugh. The crew of volunteers began mingling, sharing stories and laughter, but his eyes kept scanning for Carl. As if on cue, Carl strode into view, hands shoved deep into his pockets. He offered a nod to Jake but seemed less excited than he had been at the pizza night. Jake's stomach twisted, he'd hoped for a fire, not this subtle flicker. "Hey, Carl. Glad you made it," Jake said, forcing a smile. "Ready to kick things off?" Carl shrugged, his eyes wandering past Jake to the gathering crowd. "Yeah. Just hope this doesn't turn into a circus." The words hit harder than Jake expected. That familiar edge returned, casting shadows over the light of community spirit. "Come on, it's going to be great," he replied, trying to lift the mood. "We're making a difference, and I know the kids are excited." "Right," Carl muttered, his tone still lacking enthusiasm. With a deep breath, Jake clapped his hands to gather everyone's attention. "All right, everyone. Thank you for being here today. Let us split up into teams and tackle this cleanup. Carl and I will coordinate the route." He glanced at Carl, who reluctantly nodded. As they started to work, Jake watched the change around him. Neighbors dug into weeds, picked up litter, and formed bonds over shared tasks. Jake could feel the collective energy building, and it felt empowering. But during a quiet moment, when Jake was alone gathering supplies, he spotted Carl lingering behind the group. His expression was pensive, almost apprehensive. Something was bothering him. "Hey, Carl," Jake called as he approached. "You okay?" Carl sighed, glancing at the chaos of the cleanup. "Yeah, I'm good. Just, wondering if this will really make a difference. We pick up some trash, and the next storm will wash it all back. Seems pointless." Jake felt a flash of frustration. "You really think a little effort doesn't matter? This isn't just about trash, it's about community. It's about us coming together." "I get that," Carl replied, a frown forming. "But change doesn't happen overnight, and sometimes it doesn't happen at all." Jake let those words hang between them, heavy but also illuminating. Maybe Carl was right, but giving up wasn't an option. "Even little changes matter, Carl. Trust me. We just have to keep pushing, keep showing up." As the cleanup continued, Jake noticed the atmosphere shift. Kids chased each other, laughing while others worked alongside strangers. Something beautiful was emerging from the hard work, an undeniable spirit of hope. But was it enough to combat Carl's doubts? Just as Jake began to feel that warmth settle in, he saw Carl standing apart, deep in thought. A heart-wrenching tug of familiarity gripped Jake. He understood that feeling all too well, the fear of investing in something that might crumble. With a determined step, Jake headed towards Carl, ready to bridge the gap. "Let us tackle this together," he said gently. Not just today, but for every little win moving forward. Carl looked at Jake, their eyes locking for a moment. Jake held his breath, sensing an unspoken understanding pass between them. But as the moment stretched, Carl suddenly broke the silence, asking, "What if it's not enough? What if I can't keep this up?" Jake's heart raced. What did he say now? "I don't know," Jake admitted, the honesty hanging in the air. "But I think we have to try, right? I think it's worth fighting for." Meanwhile, somewhere behind Jake, a loud shriek interrupted their moment. A child had found a hidden treasure among the weeds. Laughter erupted, drawing every volunteer's attention, pulling them back into the joke of the moment. But Jake couldn't look away from Carl, whose expression was a mixture of curiosity and fear. In that busy atmosphere where joy collided with uncertainty, Jake wondered, could they find common ground to break through those lingering doubts? Would Carl allow hope to blossom amid fear? As the day wore on, he steeled himself. The cleanup was just the beginning. Who knew what depths they might reach if they kept pushing? The sun began to set, casting a golden hue over the small town, and Jake stood back to admire the scene. The laughter of children intermingled with the sounds of hard-working neighbors was a melody he never wanted to forget. A makeshift neighborhood barbecue was materializing in the corner as families set out their potluck contributions, the scent of grilled burgers wafting through the air, but just as the joy surrounded him, Jake felt a familiar knot of concern in his stomach. Would this fragile camaraderie hold? Would Carl's skepticism linger, cast shadows on their efforts, or could the warmth growing among them melt the edge of distrust? He pushed those thoughts aside, gritting his teeth to focus on the positive. "Hey, everyone, great job today," he called out to the group, raising his voice, injecting energy into the air. "Let's take a moment to celebrate all the hard work and the real change we've begun." Laughter erupted as the children clamored for attention while presenting their treasures, collected from the cleanup, everything from oddly shaped rocks to a surprisingly well-preserved toy car. Laughter was contagious, and Jake felt himself smile. He glanced at Carl, standing slightly off to the side, hands still deep in his pockets, brows furrowed. Jake's heart ached to see that flicker of doubt in his eyes. "Carl, come on over," he called again. "Tell everyone how much trash we gathered." Carl hesitated, then slowly made his way to the center of the crowd, looking unsure but intrigued. Jake felt a spark of hope as Carl shifted his weight from one foot to the other. It wasn't much, but it was something. Yeah. We picked up a lot, I guess," Carl mumbled, scratching the back of his neck. But there was a reluctant hint of a smile forming. "Guess it's a start." "Exactly." A burst of excitement broke out among the crowd, resonating with what Jake felt inside. "And imagine what our town could look like by coming together like this every month." "Yeah. We could keep our parks clean," Ben shouted, bouncing on his toes, eager and animated. "And the garden. We can plant flowers and veggies. And we can have more pizza nights." Someone chimed in, laughter breaking through the air, echoing with equality and possibility. Curtains of resistance began to fall, showing raw moments of vulnerability. The guarded heart of the community began to blossom, where connection replaced skepticism. Jake absorbed the changing energy, sensing the potential in those gathered beneath the warm, fading sun. Just then, Carl cleared his throat, capturing attention with a tug of the past. "Listen, I've had my doubts. And change doesn't come easy, you know. But I see something here today. Hope. I didn't know that a bunch of us cleaning up could turn into this." He gestured wide to the openness surrounding them. Kids laughing, adults coming together, that's something worth believing in. As those words touched the crowd, an extraordinary wave of applause erupted, echoing through the gathering. A powerful smile crept across Carl's face, and for the first time, Jake truly saw a man who was beginning to believe, even if just a little. "But it'll take more than today," Carl added, igniting the conversation once again. "We have to keep showing up. I want to be part of that. The joyous rumbles of the crowd echoed with enthusiasm, a chorus of unity flourishing. It wasn't just about cleanliness or gatherings, it was about rebuilding lost threads and creating something new and beautiful where once there had only been division. Then it's settled. Jake exclaimed, heart racing. We'll meet regularly, work together not just for our town, but for each other. Let's keep the bonds we've formed alive. They gathered around, breaking into small huddled groups to draft their ideas for the next few meetings, brainstorming not only cleanup events but also activities that would nurture their community spirit: movie nights under the stars, game tournaments for kids, and avenues for sharing stories from the past, paving the way for understanding. As twilight descended, Jake looked down at Ben, who was buzzing with ideas, eyes wide with a sparkle that reflected so much promise. It filled Jake's heart, and for a moment, he let go of the anxiety that had bubbled within him since the beginning. The concerns, the doubts, they could wait. Right now, the heart of the community beat brighter than ever, and they were the ones creating the rhythm. Later that night, once the crowd dispersed and Jake wrapped up, he caught Carl once again, the weariness of the day leaving both men standing in silence. "Thanks for stepping out today," Jake said. "Yeah, well, maybe you were right. Change is worth fighting for." And Carl hesitated, a flicker of vulnerability surfacing. "I'm glad I was here to witness it." Jake's smile widened, the warmth of acceptance pulsing through him. "Together, Carl. This is just the beginning. We've got a lot of work ahead, but I believe we can do it." With a nod, understanding passed between them, a bridge formed where insecurity once existed. They faced challenges, no doubt, but armed with determination, they dared to hope, to fight, and to grow together, just like a patch in a garden, ripe for blooming. The air felt electric with potential, and Jake took a deep, cleansing breath. Tonight, they had taken a bold step forward, one small victory turned into a giant leap toward healing their community. The shadows lingered, but for the first time, they were no longer alone in confronting them. In the end, it wasn't just about the little things, it was about the big changes they were willing to embrace, together. So remember, if you're moved by this story of community, unity, and the power of kindness, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Hit that like button now to feed the algorithm and keep inspiring more transformations. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear about the power of coming together. Your voice matters. Comment below with your reactions and feelings about this journey you've just witnessed. Let us keep this meaningful conversation going.